Hey everybody, welcome back. So kind of slowly starting to put the bike back together. I've got the seat post covered up here, but it's clamped on the seat post, but I got that all cleaned up, and then I went through the brakes, totally disassembled both of them, and really did a complete overhaul. And so we'll get into that a little more detailed tutorial as far as how to do that, how to get these things as light action as possible and just super smooth and everything else. So we'll go through that here in just a bit. A few things. I've got some handlebar tape I had this all along. I totally forgot I had it, but it's kind of like a synthetic leather type. It's just black, kind of grippy. And then I actually found kind of in my stash from our old bike shop, I found some of these Chanelli end caps there, so that should look pretty slick. I got the wheels, I got the front wheel built up, and then I got the tires mounted up on the wheels, and yeah, they look pretty slick. And I tried the tires in the frame and fork and everything, and it all fits. Got plenty of clearance, fits all nice. I think it's going to look really good on here. But probably, so yeah, I think what we'll do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and install the fork. I don't have all my tools to lock it in place, but we'll get it just basically assembled, greased up, mocked up, and then maybe put a couple other bits on. But yeah, let's just get right into it. So basically just wash the brake calipers, seat posts, spokes and stuff off with just in the kitchen sink, super hot water, or as hot as I could stand, and just some dishwashing detergent. I prefer Dawn. I think I was using some Palmolive or something on these, but Dawn usually works the best for cleaning bikes, bike parts, stuff like that. So got the seat post all washed, and it actually looks pretty decent just as it is, but got a little more polished with some of this semi-chrome polish, which I really like this stuff. But it's basically just a matter of, you put a little pea-sized or so droplet, about, like what you would use toothpaste wise, and just, really it's a matter of just buffing it as long as you want to. I think the more you do it, probably the better results. If you have like a polishing disc or something, motorized or whatever, it's going to work a little better. From there, once you basically polish it, and the stuff will kind of turn black, and then from there you just take a clean I used a microfiber towel, and that worked really well. But just definitely makes a difference. This seat post was somewhat scratched up, as you can see, but it came out looking pretty chrome. So brake calipers here, probably would have been easier if I would have taken the pads off, but basically what you want to do first when you're going to disassemble those is you can just push that spring in and pull it off the little perches there, and then kind of just testing it here, and it's felt a little sticky for sure, so definitely want to undo it. You basically just break, it's basically you got that inner nut and then the outer acorn nut, they're just locked against each other, and that's what holds it all in place. So we're just disassembling that. You got the two nuts, then you got one washer. This one I believe was actually on backwards. The other one was correct on the I'm not sure. I filmed both calipers here, so there's bits and pieces of both as far as the disassembly and reassembly, but got a washer in between, and then there's a washer there on the back side between the little stud plate and then the spring. So I basically just cleaned all this up, and I'd like I say, washed them off and everything in the sink, but it's difficult to get all this all the dried up grease and so forth that made it feel kind of sticky. So we'll get clean up here in just a bit, but basically I just use WD-40. If you just let it soak in for a bit and then wipe it off, that works really well to break up that old grease, kind of the same as freeing up a Shimano shifter, STI or rapid fire shifter. So Anyway, as far as the little quick release lever here, we're going to disassemble that. I went ahead and pulled the anchor bolt and everything off. Just used a big old crescent to engage onto the flat on that side. This is a 7mm, that little nut there, so a little 7mm socket, and took that thing off. This particular one was a little sticky, so took a bit to get it off. Thought I could get it off by hand at that point, but nope, had to take it a little more. So at that point, the midsection, it just kind of fell right out. The other one was a little stickier, but that basically just sets in there like so. It's got a little flange on the back side of it there that kind of holds the actual little lever plate onto the actual cam piece. So just got to kind of pop that off. It presses on to the little cam piece there that just slides out. And so just cleaned all these pieces up, like I say, with the little WD-40 found on these. It worked the best if I sprayed it down, and this one I just immediately wiped off. But if you let it soak in for 2 or 3 minutes, they would just wipe right off from there. So that was what I found worked the best for me. But it's just a matter of getting all the pieces, got everything eventually cleaned all up and everything. Some of the spots were definitely really old, dried on grease that was, it's kind of like cleaning pots and pans with, baked on stuff or whatever. So I just gotta let it soak for a bit. So on this piece, you got this slot where the spring sets in. That's gonna sit on the top. I've seen where people have just randomly, any kind of caliper brake like this, get it upside down. And this spring here as well is I've seen these installed backwards quite a few times. So this would be the backwards way. Basically, you want those two little coils where they stick out, they're going to face towards the back or away from the brake caliper there. So just like so. So you get that. I'm going to grease, put a little bit of the same grease I used on everything else here, my little rock and roll web grease, super web grease. This stuff is pretty good. It's kind of a Teflon based grease, but it looks real similar. I don't know if it's like a lithium type grease, but I know it's Teflon based. Anyway, just put your little grease the pieces up here and put the little washer on first. Not this one. We're going to want to put the one where the caliper that goes to the hole, the mounting hole, and then there's nothing on the other side. That's going to be your first piece, and then another plain washer on both sides will go next, and then the outer caliper piece with the text and everything on it there. And then once we get that on, we got our other little washer, that little serrated edge. I'm pretty sure that's going to go up against the nut. It was mounted backwards on this one, but you don't necessarily want that rubbing up against the brake calipers. So are they aluminum? So I don't know. I think that's how it goes. Pretty sure. So the little beveled rounded edge will face out on that first nut, basically the adjusting nut, and then this little acorn nut is your lock nut. So essentially you're just going to adjust that the same way you would adjust a hub or headset or just whatever. Basically you got one to adjust the tension and then the other to lock it all in place. So kind of just guesstimating here. I didn't lock it super tight, but just kind of see where we're at. And that's a little tight. Felt a little friction there, so I'm going to back it off just a little. We didn't lock it really tight, so what I'm doing is holding the spring so that stud stays in place and then backing the adjusting nut off a little bit, and so that felt pretty good there. You basically want it as loose as you can get it to where you can't really move those, can't really feel much play, but that's pretty loose there. I can actually just letting gravity just pull that other arm back in place there. So go ahead and lock her in place. So yeah, you can see that's still nice and free, no play. So now we can go ahead and hook our spring back in. Put a little grease on the where the spring that as the calipers move inwards, it basically, the little perch is gonna basically rub or move. That spring's gonna move within the perch just a little bit. So putting a little grease on these makes a pretty big difference. You know, even modern day brake calipers, they're dual pole, whatever. If you know, doing just basic maintenance, put some Triflow or a little grease or something in where that spring has to slide. It makes a pretty big difference in the actual action, as far as the light action feel, you know, that and having the brakes adjusted in this case. So got some fresh grease in there, and fresh grease on the little spring perches there, and this thing feels like totally like a new brake now. So definitely will make a huge difference in the way that lever pull feels. I just want to make sure you don't get any grease on or oil or anything on the brake pads, and got everything, you know, wipe everything down so it's nice and clean. And go ahead and put our little quick release lever assembly back in. So I'm just going to put a little grease here on the cam. We'll drop that in, kind of putting it in with the hole sort of towards the outer edge. It's a little shaft. We'll put this on actually after the little plate there. But the little lever, you'll have the little, that piece is going to kind of face towards the outside, or, you know, like in line with the brake there, I guess you could say. So it would be easy to put that on backwards, but you want to put it in this orientation. And then the little flange of the main bolt there, that's kind of gonna, sometimes I had to, on the other brake, I had to kind of use this to semi press the plate onto the little cam piece. So yeah, just by getting our wrench back on the flats on the back side, and then just tighten that in until it basically bottoms out. And then once you've got it bottomed out, you may have to kind of work it just a little to get everything pressed into place. This one just went right into, it was nice just right from the get-go. So yeah, that's basically how you the process there, rebuilding the brake. You know, put a little grease on the threads of the anchor bolt there as well, because it's just, you know, it's chrome plated bolt into a, you know, chrome plated threads and everything. So if you don't, you know, if that's super dry, it's real easy to strip these threads out on these, you know, torque it down too tight or whatever. I've seen it happen on older stuff, current stuff, just whatever. If it's chrome plated bolt, you need to have some grease on those threads. So yeah, that's basically the process of rebuilding this particular brake, but it's, you know, similar side pull brakes, kind of the same process. Got our little adjusting barrel piece here, and I noticed the threads were a little rusty there where that thing threads on, so I put a little grease on here just to, mainly as a protectant more than anything else, kind of keep that from rusting. Plus it'll make it easier to adjust later on if you need to fine tune it. A lot of these, you'll see that the black piece there where you turn, it's broken off, but it's basically just an O-ring. So find the appropriate size O-ring if that's missing, and you can use that in its place. But yeah, that's the basic process on these. Make sure you wipe everything down, don't get any grease on those brake pads. So I got these three. This is the freewheel that came on it. It's 5-speed Millard. I think it's a 14, I think a 23 maybe. That's what came on it. I just kind of stuff I've had in my stash. I had this Shimano 600, which it's 6-speed. It's got the crisscross teeth there. All these, the ratcheting action feels pretty good on all of them. The Shimano looks like it may have the most wear of the three. And then I got this Sox one that's a 7-speed. It's like 1321. So I'm kind of leaning towards this one, but I don't know. If I'm going to ride it, may take it up Lookout Mountain my first ride, so I may end up needing this one. I don't know. But Yeah, I'm still trying to decide. That's my 3 choices there that I'm potentially going to put on the bike. Alright, so we'll go ahead and get our headset put together here. So the bearings are going to go, basically when you have that's the upper headset cup there, and then the lower one, it's pressed, it's going to sit in the frame just like this, and the bearing rests on there. So just going off the cup portion here, these bearings, there's two different ways. You got kind of this side that's closed, and then you got this side that's kind of open. So these bearings will always sit, they're going to sit just like that. You don't want to put them in like this, or you'll damage the bearings. So kind of, if you just think of them, like you have your cup shape there, and then the way the bearing is kind of, this outer part kind of moves around, you want it to kind of fit in within that cup there. So usually I'll do this with a grease gun or something. I like to just get the grease kind of feeling inside of the kind of the bearing race there, or not the race, but the bearing retainer. A little bit more. There we go. And sometimes I'll put grease, I'm just going to set this one in this cup here, just like so. This bearing's going to sit, it'll go up in the cup in the frame like that on the down, the lower cup. So we'll go ahead and get this greased up as well. Hopefully I'm getting this all in the frame. I can't see the 100% what the camera is filming sometimes, so apologize if I get it out of the frame or it's out of focus. Alright, so we're just going to set that on the fork like so. We'll shift our angle up here to the frame. Alright, so we got our fork here, greased up bearings. So we're just going to slip that in, and then got our cup, upper cup there, threaded one. So I'll put a little grease on the upper race there. And basically we're just going to thread this down hand tight. There we go. I think this is gonna, so the way it was before, I pulled all that upper race out and the lower cup and then the crown race on the fork. It kind of reoriented everything, because as it was before with the fork straight forward, you could kind of feel a little bit of notchiness, but I got this pretty tight, about as tight as it would be adjusted, and that feels pretty smooth, so not too worried about that. Let's see, get this on here right side up. Last time it was, somebody had put it on there upside down. It's driving me crazy. Alright, so I've got my wrench for this top nut, but I don't have one to hold the lower in place, so we'll just kind of keep that in that position for now. We'll, once I get my tools, we'll lock that in as we're moving on to the next step. I'm going to put these freshly cleaned brakes up here and then just test fit the wheels and see how that's all looking. So we got our little star washer on the back side there, which that'll touch right up against the frame. A little recessed nut. got a little 5mm ratchet I like to use, but I got it up at the shop. So we'll just use the regular old hex key. And there's two flats on the back side of here that are, I think, 10mm. You can, you know, adjust the brake one way or the other once it's snug down. But I'm just gonna eyeball it, get it as centered as I can, just basically looking at it. Right. Alright. Front one's basically the same way. Got our little nut back there. Use the 3-way on this one, a little easier to spin that thing around. At least without the wheels on it. Alright. Well, stick the wheel in here and see what it looks like. Alright, so still need to clean these. Haven't cleaned up the skewers yet, but that's one nice thing about these old bikes. They don't have the lawyer lip things on the forks there, so yeah, it clears, but not by a lot. But I don't know. It's about the same as my race bike, but I think that looks pretty. That looks pretty slick. All right. Alright, I'm liking, digging the way it looks so far, and I know these things are going to ride super sweet. Just as it's a pretty big fat tire. I'd say this is borderline about definitely the fattest tire you would ever want to put on these rims for sure. But yeah, I think it looks good. I think it's going to ride even better. But yeah, that's gonna, I think in the next episode we'll get the bottom bracket in. Still need to polish up all the cranks and chain rings and stem and bars and all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's about it for this week or this episode, and thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.